Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Make Sense. Today we're talking mental agility in business. And our guest today is none other than Valentino Munroe. He is the president of Onnit Systems and has been a director of the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce, as well as a past president of the Organization of Young Professionals. A leader in his own right, he joins us today right after this. Welcome, Mr. Valentino Munroe, to the show. Valentino, how are you, man?
I'm great. I'm great. And how are you?
I'm good. Good. So just so we get started and have an opportunity to jump right in, do you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself and your businesses?
Certainly. My background is information technology, and so that's been my primary discipline. I've also gotten involved in business over the last few years, and so I operate a company called Onnit Systems. We're there in the Village Road Shopping Plaza. I also operate a restaurant, Jumbe Cafe, and also a shipping company, Big Yard Shipping. And so all three of those operations are based in the Village Road Shopping Plaza on the corner of Village Road and Barnett Road.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're very busy these days. I mean, three different industries, three different sets of rules to follow, and three different likely outcomes. I mean, how important, if you will, is staying mentally tough in business? What does that mean to you, being mentally tough in business?
Right. Well, I think mental toughness really is one of the factors that determines whether someone is built for entrepreneurship or the person is built, for a regular 9 to 5. If you don't have a certain level of toughness, you won't survive in business because that's just the nature of the game, right? I mean, you settled on a particular course, things happen, wherever you were betting your money, wherever you had your biggest hopes, falls through. And so, what do? You can't just pack up and go back to the job. You have to persist, you have to adjust, you have to sometimes find new industries, a complete new business model. And so, I mean, that requires a certain level of mental toughness. And so, if you're thinking about entrepreneurship, if you're the kind that give up easily, if you're the kind that lose hope, lose faith, it really you won't make it because it never goes the way you expected it to go, especially as you set out initially. And so it's about overcoming hurdles and overcoming challenges. And so I consider mental toughness really the foundation of an entrepreneurship and certainly business at large.
So let's pivot on a point that you made about certainly barriers and hurdles, and not to sound like a track and field analyst, but it often is said that there are a lot of unseen factors in business, forces that may be obstacles and barriers that you have to prepare for outside of the physical building that you operate from, the products that you offer, and things of that nature. There are, quote unquote, invisible forces. Let's talk about a few of them, starting with competition. I mean, you get in business and you necessarily can't control who your competitors are. How do you stay mentally tough in an industry that's highly competitive?
Right. The competition is a big factor. And I mean, that's one that you kind of see coming down the line because it's a part of business. And so I think it's one of those things that as you plan, you may generally, develop a niche, plan your strategy, how you're going to compete, how you're going to gain market share. So that's one of those things that you can include in your business plan. I think there are some barriers, there are challenges that we often may not see coming down the pipeline because things don't work out as planned. The market changes. You have challenges where your capital is consumed in 3 months as opposed to 6 months, shift in market cost of operation changes, dealing with human capital, personnel, right? Probably one of the most difficult challenges that we generally don't give enough focus to. How do you find and recruit good talent that can really contribute and help you as you develop your operation? We take it for granted, but without the right talent and manpower, running businesses extremely difficult and high turnover, right? I mean, the 9 to 5, we took jobs at times, you didn't like it, we left. When you're in business, you realize how expensive that experience is for an employer. And so, when you recruit and someone leaves, especially if the person looked like they were going to work out well, that can be very, very expensive, very, very frustrating. And so these are the kinds of challenges that we sometimes are not able to plan adequately for, even though they're not huge. When you compile them, they really can disappoint you, as a new entrepreneur. And so, mental toughness certainly, is a big requirement to overcome those.
Yeah, I heard a lot about the human resource component and how that may impact your profitability. But let's talk also about supplier relationships. I mean, in the shipping industry, there may be parts and obviously items that you need. There may in the restaurant industry, of course, there's lots of inputs that you buy, and for on systems, I'm sure there's inventory that you need to source. Talk about supplier relationships as well. I mean, if you have a great relationship or a poor relationship with your supplier, that can invariably impact your price. How do you deal with negotiations with your suppliers and staying mentally tough when you may not be the biggest fish in the world, yet you still have to find a cost point that makes sense for your business? How do you stay tough in those circumstances?
Right. Yeah, I think one of the very, very key words there is relationships. And that would be, up and down the chain, from the supplier and to all, with all those that may fall in between, the delivery guy, the person who's receiving, your shipment at the warehouse, and who's scheduling it to be delivered, whether it's air cargo or sea cargo, to the freight forwarder to get into you. And so you would find, maintaining those relationships, responding to messages on time, providing information, payments, following through on your commitments, and when you're not able to, shooting a message or making a phone call just to, update all of those that involve. Because the biggest difference is when you have those relationships, people pay you the respect and courtesy, that you need. Oftentimes, is what you need that really makes the difference, because you're operating at the $5,000 mark. You're not operating at the $50,000 mark like some of the big fish, but you still need the level of service. You still need the commitment to make sure you can meet your timeline and your commitments on your end. And so I think the relationships is probably one of the most important components in dealing with suppliers. And certainly, next to that would be honoring your timelines, making sure you meet or exceed your payment timelines, especially, to make sure that you always sit in a good light.
Yeah, no, that's important information to be shared. What I also understand from what you're saying is that the key word being relationships, but relationship spans not only that of having great relationships with your suppliers, but let's talk about having great relationships about your potential or existing clientele, the buyers. I mean, that's where it's all at. How do you stay mentally tough when, in terms of getting feedback from clients about product availability, about the product and service in general, and sometimes buyers have choice. How do you deal with staying mentally strong if you've lost a major client, or trying to be in the position to transition a major client over to you?
Yeah, I think a big part of that, Adrian, has to do with your credibility in your business, especially in an industry, let's say IT, where you provide a service and people rely on you, to give them the kind of advice they need to make the kind of decisions that they need. They trust your judgment because based on what you say, they would determine, well, are we going to invest this money at this point? Can we get by for the next 2 months before we change this equipment up? And so a big part of that is making sure you maintain your credibility as a professional, especially in the service industry, and that you're also knowledgeable about the industry and about the advice you're giving. And certainly, when you don't know, you admit you don't know and let the client know that you'll get back to him shortly. I always let clients know what my work process entails in terms of coming in, maybe performing an assessment, making a recommendation. And a big part of that is doing research. I let you know part of that as the process because I need you to know that when I speak, I'm speaking from what I know based on experience and my knowledge in the industry. When I'm not sure, I check and verify. And so that's absolutely very, very important. And that's also an important part of the sales process because if the customer or the client can trust your judgment, if he's confident that you're always going to be honest and upfront, if he believes in your recommendation and he doesn't see you as someone just simply trying to make the sale, then certainly that makes the relationship a lot more smooth. And not only will he be happy to join your client list, he would certainly speak of the good service you provide and probably add to your list by way of friends and referrals. And so that's very important.
Yeah, a bit about the marketing component obviously is very important. Not to get away from the other point that you throw it in there regarding the industry. How does having three businesses in three separate industries influence how you go about doing research? It must be a tall task to keep up with industry trends in three different industries.
Right. In fact, it has been a tall task. Sometimes it's a stretch, right? What's I've had the benefit of, well, initially my primary operation was on its systems. And so the shipping aspect of it was something I've done, in a family business. And so I kind of grew up with a certain level of knowledge and exposure to that industry. As part of my operation in on its systems and operating a storefront, I was already doing a lot of shipping, even for my on its systems operation. And so when I assessed it, a lot of the things I were doing for on its systems made it a lot easier for me to expand the use of my space and add a second operation, shipping. And so really, the process I would go through to coordinate logistics for on it, clear shipment, get them into our warehouse is the exact same process I would do for big yard shipping. And so now it's just a matter of, the additional manpower and putting in systems that would facilitate dealing with customers, invoicing and organizing just larger shipments as opposed to smaller individual ones. And so the challenge for me has been growing three enterprises all at the same time, and dealing with the human capital challenge, bad staff turnover. Sometimes I got to take off my IT hat and put on my big yard shipping hat. And so I mean, for me, I have the benefit of being flexible, versatile in some respects. But you learn in business, you can't do it alone. And so as the operation grows, I'm happy to add the help where it's needed. And certainly it means too, outsourcing for a certain amount of services that I may be able to provide or I have provided for myself in the past, but you kind of free yourself up so you can focus on more substantial aspects of your operation. And as you do that, you adjust through the processes, and you find that you're able to grow your operation. It doesn't happen fast. It takes a little longer growing three all at once, but you learn as you go and you adjust, and you certainly will be better off at the end of the day.
No, yeah. So again, I mean, yeah, I'm thinking through your answer, and it immediately hit me that in business, a lot of industries face technological changes that are very, very rapid. I mean, I think about how we're taping this show today, and maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, it had to be in studio. You're in the comfort of your home. I am as well.
Right.
How has technology been used by you? And are you yourself, somebody that has an IT background, uh, I guess, impacted by the swift pace of technology? How do you use it for your advantage and stay mentally tough, knowing that you may have invested in a technological solution today that tomorrow may be redundant or stale? How do you navigate that? Because technology is a very important part of business these days.
Right, certainly. The thing is, it's something I've always embraced, right? From my early days in technology, I loved the pace and the changes. It's always had a very, very high demand in terms of keeping pace with what's happening. One point in my early days in IT, I wanted to know everything. And so, as you develop the skill set and the experience, you learn how you can function not knowing everything, because it's almost impossible to keep up on every front. But you need to know what you know, what you don't know, and then how you can access the information, provide the research. And so a big part of it is, as someone with a technology background, you learn to approach situations systematically, where you can gather the information and make the proper decisions based on your experience. And then you learn to always take initiative to train and expose yourself to new information, new technology, what's out there in the market. One of the challenges we've had, with this in this COVID environment and pandemic, is realizing that we have to look to bigger markets with on its systems. And so part of what we're doing now is harnessing this technology, the managed services that we provided to our clients here in Nassau and throughout Freeport and the Family Islands, and looking to expand that reach now into the US. And so I'm looking, to come out of this area from harnessing what I've already been using on a smaller scale, but now providing those remote services to markets, throughout the US up and down. And so that's my focus now, to harness that so that, we're dealing with a larger market, you have higher potential. And then you also dealing with a market with who have a lot more flexibility and ease of acceptance of the technology, the changes, the investment cost, and understand the importance of it in embracing your business operations. Because part of, well, what I've noticed here is that, in the Bahamas, sometimes we've been slow to embrace some of the new technological changes. And so it means, while I may recommend an upgrade here, um, the decision maker is not prepared to invest at that level, even though he can see the benefit and understand how important it is, because he's in a stable position in terms of the industry. He's slower to move, and so you at that in that instance have to work at his pace. It may slow you because it means now you may have to do a certain work in a way that maybe be a little more demanding. Whereas with the new technology, I don't have to come out to your office to resolve an issue. I can resolve the issue remotely. You're confident that the issue is resolved. You don't mind paying, even though you don't see me, right? Sometimes the guy doesn't want to pay you because he doesn't see you, any figure man, you don't do that much work. So those are some of the things, we gotta balance with this technology thing.
No, I mean bargain for bargain, sweat for sweat, and it's all a mentality that suggests if you're working, I should see you working. But technology certainly has brought in some innovation, and the question therefore is how do you mentor a younger entrepreneur that wants to come in and get in the business space, and they may say, well, I have a comfort level with technology. I have a comfort level with the information age that we're in. I don't need to be as mentally tough as a Valentino Munroe or as business owners that were here before me. I can just do it on my own and just leverage the technology that I have. Is that a good and right approach?
Well, the thing it is, getting into business with the technology certainly is a lot easier, but it still requires the same level of mental toughness. It also, I think, now requires maybe a certain level of discipline, because in order to keep up with this technology, it requires some discipline where you have to do your research, do your studies, and come up to speed on certain aspects of your business. And so, before, in most industries, things were done in a certain way. Today, how things are done today is no telling how it would be done tomorrow. And as somebody in a particular industry, you have to adjust and sometimes maybe adjust your business model to the changes. And so it still requires mental toughness. It requires discipline, that you able to keep pace with the changes and expand and grow your operation so that you stay in business and that you don't, resign to what how things were done in 2015 and not be able to adjust, to the new model for 2020 or 2021. And so mental toughness, technology may improve the way we work, but I don't think it would eliminate the personality requirements, the characteristics that you would need as a budding entrepreneur in order to have the courage to stay, and survive and grow our operation.
Great points. The point that I want to focus on, though, is another unseen element of getting in business, and that is the regulatory environment, where our business may not necessarily have as much direct influence on, say, property taxes or business license fees, or whether or not a policy goes in favor or out of their favor. I mean, these are dynamics that can influence the amount of customers that come in your store or the amount of money that you pay out in costs. How do you stay mentally tough when there is an unfavorable regulatory development that you have to adjust to? I.e., we're in a COVID-19 environment. All of us may want to continue to operate as usual. However, there now needs to be new guidelines for safety measures that have to be implemented, or lockdown measures in order to slow the spread of a very contagious virus. How do you deal and stay mentally tough in a regulatory environment that is always changing and may not work in your favor temporarily?
Yeah, I think that's been a big aspect of these COVID lockdowns and requirements even to operate. In some instances, it's given some competition the edge, whereby a liquor store also has a restaurant operation, and so that liquor store falls on the restaurant aspect of the COVID sense. That's favorable to them, even though they're operating as a restaurant. They're selling liquor. All the other liquor stores are closed because liquor stores aren't supposed to be open. And so you have instances like that where our businesses are affected by unfavorable regulations. I think a part of it is, and I mean, it's really, the nature of business. Businessmen, we don't like when regulations disadvantage us, but we adapt to being, having the flexibility to change and to survive challenges. You have to know how to overcome challenges. And I think you learn it, and it's the key element to even staying in business. Those that come and go quickly, this is probably one of the issues they really challenge with. So you're gonna be thrown a curveball. Regulations are gonna change for all industries. Part of it is adapting and maybe changing your business model, maybe pivoting your operation instead of doing this particular service. Maybe you should be looking at this particular service, or maybe you should just add the restaurant element to your liquor store operation so that you have a broader requirement, and you can, switch under the restaurant regulations when it's suitable for you, or under the liquor regulations when it's more suitable like the other guy. But the key element here is being able to adapt, being able to pivot, change your model, expand your operation, bring in new service set, a new skill set, and even if it requires finding the talent to help you, provide these kinds of services. I always tell, people when we talk about stuff like this, is one of the critical things you got to bear in mind is the key is being in business. It doesn't mean you're gonna what you start off doing, that's where you're gonna end. You may be in business, but you may be far away from the nature of business you started out in, 2 years ago. You may have started out, providing landscaping. In your experience, you may realize, but you know what? Termite and insect control, it's a big opportunity and a bigger market out there for that kind of business. And so you just simply do a major pivot and get into that kind of industry. And so you do that. The regulations, I mean, when we can lobby and reach out to those that are responsible for regulations, we do that. Sometimes they recognize the injustice and make the adjustments. Sometimes they don't. Well, nonetheless, you still have to persist as a businessman because it's your job to make business happen and to take care of your staff and all those that look to your operation, for survival.
Well, it does sound like there's an intense amount of mental toughness that has to be a part of your fabric as a business owner. The question, therefore, again, is how do you stay mentally strong? I mean, what exercises do you do? What recommendations would you like to make? And I mean, I know you've been personally a leader in so many different organizations, and leadership being a key component. I mean, what advice would you give to anybody wanting to be mentally tough in business? Is there a particular book that you're reading? Is there a particular course that you're taking or have taken in the past to help with mental toughness? How do you stay strong in the game?
Well, yeah, I think a big part of it is, as you pursue business, you have to continue to develop yourself. You have to make sure you're exposing yourself to the right network, to the right associations, the right organizations, feeding your mind with the right material where you can better understand how to assess various aspects of, business and how to make the right decisions. A lot of the mental toughness is really like me, for instance. Lately, I've been focusing on mental development, how the mind works, how do you overcome challenges mentally, and how do you, visualize your future. A lot of it we take for granted. Most of it we're familiar with, but we don't understand the real mechanics of it. A child uses his imagination to create his world, and he can live in that world for 2, 3 hours, play time, and then come out and then go do homework. As an adult, mental toughness is having the ability to do that because you have to do that now, overcoming all of the distractions and all of the issues and pressures of business that's coming at you. But you need to cut out this time where you can visualize, your growth, your plan, and the changes that needs to happen in your industry. Because a big part of mental toughness is being able to simply control what you think and not being impacted or directed at all times by what's coming at you. And so part of what I do is I get up early in the morning, I go through a meditation. I try to share, in a meditation process that feeds my mind positive things, helps me to get my day started and focus on having a great day. And so from 5:36 in the morning, I've decided today is going to be a great day. And so if you call me at 8 o'clock and you throw me a curveball, I duck and I get up and continue to go on to having my great day. Because part of what I do is protect my mind from all of the balls and the darts that are out there. If they hit you, they can really derail you and really cause you to experience mental challenges. And then you start to second guess, your ability to deal with this kind of thing on your own. Because, in the 9 to 5, you didn't have these kind of pressures. All you have to do is show up on the job on time and leave shortly after 5, and you would have been okay. And so if you're not mentally tough, those are some of the things you can do to develop that kind of toughness and also to maintain it, because you never get to a point where you arrive and you stay. You have to continue to nurture that mind based on the environment, the material you feed yourself, you read, your network, and your associations. That's important.
Well, Valentino, it's certainly been a pleasure to have you on Make Sense today and sharing your insights about a very important topic, which includes managing your mind and your mental fitness and being mentally tough, particularly in this COVID-19 environment. So until next time, we hope you enjoyed this episode on Make Sense. We'll see you next time.
You're watching RBNTV. We are networking, promoting, we're scoring points for you, proclaiming, declaring, here to encourage you. No matter the problem, we will enlighten you. We hear you, please listen. There is a